The question is basically, what should Sam do? He has a lot of challenges with leadership at work, a lot of challenges with leadership at home, a number of challenges with his faith, with his character, all the things we've been talking about in this course. Typically, somebody comes to us for advice, and what might we be inclined to say? You know, independent of these models out there, anything that you read for today, what's typical here? We'd say, well, Sam, you need to stop doing X, Y, and Z, and you need to start doing P, D, and Q, and you need to prioritize family over work, and you need to spend more time at home, and you need to stop snapping at your employees and treat them like human beings, and you need to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And it's not that that's bad advice, but maybe we can do better than that. Maybe we can do better than just identifying various kinds of practices or tactics in which he can engage, because what's likely to happen? Even if he does take some of that advice, it might not have a whole lot of staying power. There is this model out there, Dallas Willard's general pattern for personal transformation, which, by the way, is, by calling it a general pattern, it's something that would apply across contexts. That's what he means here. And so, personal, professional, across industries. It could apply to organizational change as much as it applies to personal change. But this three-part model of vision, intention, and means, culminating perhaps in change that lasts. The devil's in the details, though. It's one thing to identify a paradigm. It's another thing to be able to apply it to a particular situation. So where do we start with Sam? Okay, be able to see what that changed life looks like. That's a big part of it, having that vision for what the changed life looks like, and don't miss this, and recognizing or believing that that change is good. That life would be better if I took steps in that direction, if I were really able to get there. It's one thing just to have a picture of what it could be. It's another thing to really embrace it. All right, and if you don't have the latter piece, then chances are none of our intentionality will change. There'll be no further decision on our part to do something differently than we would otherwise. Why? Because change is hard. So seeing clearly a vision of what the future could be and believing that that is in fact better than what I have now or the trajectory of where I'm going, clearly pretty important.
In any case, not just this one, but use a role model.
And what does that role model have to do with vision?
Well, so say he wants to be that better person and do that better things. He can use a role model in his life to
okay,
be more.
Good. This is exceptional because, and you have someone there in that role model that demonstrates it can be done. This is what it means to be an excellent boss. This is what it means to be an excellent husband. This is what it means to be a consummate Christian professional. Role models for home and work, and for what real success looks like. Who do you think his role model is at work? His boss, Mr. Simmons. And what's Mr. Simmons like from the 60 seconds that we saw here? What did he do with respect to the other employees? They're all intimidated, and he doesn't even say hello to them. He doesn't even look at them. He just walks right out the room. They're the little people. Sam, he's one of the insiders. He's part of the executive team. There's us, and there's them. And that's exactly the way Sam treats them, right? You know, you're just a bunch of underlings. You're just a bunch of peons. You're just a bunch of replaceable folks who cannot get the job done. And you're lazy, too. You're leaving at 6 o'clock. He has a role model at work. He wants to be like Mr. Simmons, or so we might think. Maybe he can do better, is the point. Maybe he can do better. Maybe he has no great role model for how to be a husband and a father, but he needs one. That's one possibility, as you see here, one possibility for catching that vision of what the better life could be. Your starting point is not with the means, but with some sort of better vision. And what Willard's saying is, if we catch that vision, and it's exciting, and we see that it's good, or even if it's the flip side, like he has now, and it's a vision of how bad your life is if you continue going down this road, and you're sitting there lonely in your car, broken, and not even being able to pray, well, you're starting to catch a vision there too. But regardless, it culminates in some sort of intentionality. The intention here may be to live and to lead on a different basis, or maybe we might say in this class, to live and to lead more faithfully. If this does not change, please do not miss this point. If the intentionality doesn't change, nothing else will change long term. So then the question becomes, what might be the means of change? These are the how-tos. If the word means is too academic or reminds you of statistics too much or something like that, this is what this whole book is about, celebration of discipline. I don't know if you've picked up on the paradigm here, but this is what Foster is trying to offer to us. He's gleaning from really centuries of writing, of teaching, as well as what you see in the life of Jesus and others in the Bible. He says here in chapter 1, you read it for today, the disciplines are God's way of transforming us. These disciplines, these various practices, God's way of transforming us, spiritual growth, is the purpose of these disciplines. And Willard, you didn't read this for today, but what is a spiritual discipline? It is an activity that essentially is within our own power, something that we can do, and if we do it enough, it allows us to do things outside of our own power. Maybe this is sounding a little esoteric, maybe this is sounding a little too theological, maybe this is sounding a little too out there. In practical terms, what does it look like? What does that really mean? Activities within our own power that allow us to do things that are beyond our power, if we, in fact, engage these activities habitually. Well, Stephen was just talking about one of them. There's probably not a person in this room who hasn't prayed at one point or another. And one of the purposes of prayer, you want to just comment again on what you were saying?
We have the access of God's power. He just tells us, hey, ask for it. So
Prayer is an activity that is within our own power that may ultimately allow us to do things beyond our power. That's the theory here, if you want to think about it that way. That's the paradigm. And what are these activities? We've been reading all semester, and you can certainly read more in Celebration of Discipline and elsewhere, but a whole litany of ideas for Sam. Well, Sam, you just got to pray more. Well, Sam, you got to go to church more. I just went to church. I had to leave. I couldn't stand it. Well, Sam, you just need to engage in some confession. Maybe you need to fast for a day. Maybe you need to study Scripture more. Maybe you need to engage in service to others more. And what do you make of lists like this? Don't lose context. We're talking about you have to have this vision. It culminates in a new kind of intentionality. And then, if you have that intentionality, maybe we'll ask, well, how do I get there? And this is one answer to how do I get there? With there being a new way of thinking, a new way of living. And you're going to give them a list of things to do? The guy doesn't have any time to begin with. We read a thing or two for today that may help us with this. One of the very rational objections in the modern day, where people are so overloaded and we have so many things to do, and especially in this overloaded season of life that people like Sam experience, it's like, I'd like to do that, but I'm just going to have to neglect other things that are maybe equally important. And how do we respond to that, Patrick?
He has his main jobs, and you could say that he's overwhelmed if he keeps doing that, but the thing is, as he's doing it, he could constantly reflect on seeing how he could get
Okay, good. This was the article for today. It's actually a book chapter, A Better Way to Think About Prayer, David Steindl-Rast. How much time does it take to pray if we think about prayer not as going off to your prayer closet, getting on your knees and talking to God, but as being mindful of God's presence in the midst of everything else that we are doing? How much extra time does it take? The point is, it takes zero extra time. That if you conceptualize the disciplines as something you would do within life, from within our life, rather than in addition to the rest of our life, then perhaps we have something that will fit. Foster puts it this way on the very first page of Celebration of Discipline. He says, we must not be led to believe that these disciplines are only for the spiritual giants and hence beyond our reach, or for contemplatives who devote all their time to prayer and meditation. That's not what he's talking about here. Right, he's saying, far from it. God intends the disciplines of the spiritual life to be for ordinary human beings, people who have jobs and care for children and wash dishes and mow lawns. In fact, and this is the main point, so don't miss this last line, the disciplines are best exercised in the midst of our relationships with husband and wife, brothers and sisters, friends and neighbors, teachers and students, roommates, you name it, rather than apart from them. He's talking about this class being prayer. He's talking about this class being worship, rather than worship being something you do over in chapel and then you come to class. In fact, in the Hebrew, the word avodah, I don't know, any of you speak Hebrew or learn Hebrew somewhere along the way? I did once upon a time. I can't even do the alphabet anymore. But regardless, one thing I do remember is that the root for this word is linked to both the word work and worship. Think about that. We compartmentalize, we separate these things in the modern day. Not so back in ancient Israel. Work could be worship. The work that we do in here could be a form of worship if we're doing it with the right mindset. This is what Foster is talking about. This is what Willard is talking about. These disciplines being in the midst of our day and being integrated into what we're doing. This mindfulness rather than an add-on, rather than separate and apart from all the other things that we have to do. This isn't a to-do list. It's something that gets integrated. It's just a reframing of what we're doing on a moment-to-moment basis. Do you understand the distinction? The objection, but I'll never get anything done, you'll get exactly the same amount done and maybe even more. It'll just be done from a different perspective. That's where these guys are coming from in this paradigm. It's stuff I wish I knew at age 20, folks, so I don't know to what extent you're seeing value in it, but there's some good stuff here. Spiritual disciplines put us in a place where God freely pours out His grace and can change us. Right? This enables that change to happen. So that's the point, Ethan. Is it God's job? No, not entirely. Is it our job? No, not entirely. But the answer is yes, it's both. All right, one of these both ands rather than an either or. And haven't we talked about some of this throughout the semester? We picked up on some of how these disciplines cause change. Which ones?
Service to others.
Service to others, and in particular, not self-righteous service, but what Foster called true service. And maybe even hidden service. If we really engage in that, it culminates in, or can culminate in, humility. One of the most elusive virtues, one of the most challenging virtues to cultivate. And we think about it, the arrow going the other way, that humility, if we have real humility, will serve others, which is true. But the point here is if we, this is an activity that we can engage in our own power, that culminates in us being able to do something outside of our power. That's what a spiritual discipline is. And through that, God pours out His grace and enables us to do the kinds of things that He wants us to do. That's the paradigm. So we saw that with service. Where else did we see it? It was at least one other time this semester that you read about a discipline as a potential pathway to change.
Simplicity.
With simplicity, which we talked about as focus, can culminate in more productivity and more excellence in being able to get the job done better. And the same thing with study. Deep study. There's real concentration there and reflection. That's the way it works. It enables us to do things that we might not be able to do otherwise. Appropriate celebration of the successes, appropriate gratitude. And I don't know to what extent you picked up on the power of gratitude in your readings last night, but there is an increasing amount of evidence, scientific evidence, that gratitude culminates in human strength. That through gratitude, in fact, I think I may even have a slide on it here, that through gratitude, we may see more life satisfaction, more vitality, happiness, optimism, hope. A lot of positive things flow from having a grateful spirit, from focusing on what we have rather than on what we don't have. That's part of the celebration that Foster is talking about. We didn't read that chapter for this semester, but it's one that you may want to go back and take a look at because it is so empowering. And it's negatively related to a lot of bad things. And if you want to start somewhere, maybe you start with this. Okay, we'll close out. What does this have to do with Sam? The question was, what should Sam do? What might be a better response than he needs to prioritize better, he needs to make some decisions, he needs to go back and confess to his wife. I mean, he may need to do all of these things. What should Sam do? The Dallas Willard School of Thought would say vision, intentionality, and means. And not that there is just one answer to this case question, but maybe a fresh, compelling vision which culminates in a decision on his part. A new will for things to be different in the future, culminating in a question of, all right, how do I get there? Well, here are these different disciplines that for hundreds of years have been helpful, that are taught throughout Scripture. And basically, Sam, it's a reordering of your life around God. It's a reordering of your work around God. It's a reordering of your home life around God. It affects how you drive. It affects how you play golf. It affects how you talk with your clients. It affects what you do when people are looking and when people are not looking. It's a total transformation. And so that's really what Foster and Willard are talking about with this advice on how change happens. Last question of the course. What does this have to do with leadership? It seems like we're in this a theology course or a philosophy course here. We're talking about spiritual formation today. We came in here with the intention of talking about leadership. Well, you folks are going to go through a lot of leadership training in your life, whether you want to or not. It's just everywhere in the professional fields that you're going into. The vast majority of that training will focus on the surface. Will focus on the superficial. And in fact, Foster says the very first line of Celebration of Discipline, superficiality is the curse of our age. Superficiality is also the curse of leadership development everywhere. And what I mean by that is they will teach you these are the things you need to do to lead well around here. And they are almost all external. You need to talk to people this way, you need to make time for people, you need to dress this way, you need to have these credentials, all of these things that are visible, all of these things that are external. But the reality is that character is a cornerstone of leadership. All of these things on the outside flow from what is on the inside. And you can know all the right things to do, but not be able to do them consistently. This course has largely been not about the externals, but about the internals. And as you see up here, this outward journey to lead others well. All this leadership training you might be getting in other contexts. All these books you're going to read on leadership, all these blogs you're going to read on leadership, all this advice you're going to get from mentors that you have. A lot of it is about the external, about the outward journey. But this outward journey to lead others well really begins with this inward journey, to know ourselves well, to know God better, to develop exceptional character. It flows from the inside to the outside. There's only so long that you can fake it if you just have it on the outside. And on the inside, we really don't have integrity. We really don't have a commitment to excellence. We really don't have humility. We really don't have the courage necessary. We really don't have fill in the blank. If it's not on the inside, long term, it will not be on the outside. That has been the point of this course. It is to influence us at the heart level. It's been about the inner life of a leader rather than the external practices. All right, folks, thank you very much. God bless you. It's been a good semester. Thanks.